Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the first session of the Tezos Speaker Series. I'm Johnny Dean Mann. I'm a writer and artist, but I also publish, the editor of the Tickle, the first, as far as I know, NFT magazine. We've featured Disc Collective. I don't know whether you can see them on the wall yet. No. Disc Collective and Ivona Town. We're shortly to feature Tyler Boswell too. I won't talk too much today. I'll let the artists do most of that. So on to introductions then. Ivona, would you like to start? Introduce yourself.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much all for coming here. I'm Ivona Tau. I'm an AI artist, mixing photography, code, machine learning, a lot of different stuff lately. So I'm really working on the intersection of various new media. And yeah, my goal is really to connect the human and the machine element.
And Tyler.
Hi, my name is Tyler Boswell. I'm a web developer by day and creative coder from Las Vegas, Nevada. Pretty new to generative art. I only started getting into it last year. But it's been a lot of fun using my technical code background and sort of being able to finally express myself artistically. So yeah, excited to be here.
Thank you, Tyler. And we're also joined by Disc Collective from Istanbul, I believe. Disc Collective, over to you.
Yes. Hello, everyone. We're really happy to join you from Istanbul. My name is Bilge, and I am an artist and co-founder of Disc Collective. I've actually met with generative art and creative coding like almost 2 years ago. And before that, I was actually working as an artist manager in music business, music industry. So I was actually wanted to focus on looking for like alternative models as a business model for artists, especially the ones that are producing their works digitally. And I wanted to focus on producing works digitally, distributing them digitally, and sharing them digitally. So that's how I met with NFTs, blockchain, and Web3. And we decided with Ilgan to, I didn't mention, but I was actually doing my audio and visual works as a hobby when I was working as a manager. So we decided to share our works as NFTs and through Disc Collective. So that's how we found Disc Collective.
And I'm Ilgan. I'm actually an electroacoustic music composer. And as Bilge, it's been 2 years that I met with creative coding and with generative art, because like I was in a search for creating more organic sounding elements in the music. So I started programming my music. Then I met with processing, and here we are.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for joining us from Istanbul. So the title of the speaker series is Performance in Code, and generative art has a performative, interactive kind of nature to it, participatory as well, particularly with this exhibition where visitors can mint their own artwork. I'd just like to go to each artist in turn to ask their thoughts about how you position yourselves as artists within this dynamic, and maybe also talk to us about the individual projects that you're showcasing in the booth. Ivona first.
Yeah, so my project is called Whispers and Code, so it's a direct allusion to the title Performance and Code. And it's also something that is very different from my previous projects, because I go into performance aspect here in a very strong way, trying to engage viewers, mentors, anyone really interested to play with the work. And through the reversal of AI role, usually when we hear the term AI art, we think of, well, AI is our tool. We tell AI draw me a picture of a cat in a rocket ship. But here I just decided to reverse the role and also show that AI can be used in a creative process in a very different way. So here AI makes the decisions. And those decisions are not performed by AI, but you, a viewer, can do something else. So this is where performative aspect comes into play, also through conversation with all generative projects such as, or conceptual projects such as Solowit, for example, whose instructions were to be performed by people. Here people are performing the instructions, but also they can disobey the machine. We're different from the machines in such a way that we have free will, but when we are training neural networks, they don't have any choice. They just optimize the loss function forever. And this is where this kind of conversation between what is human, what is mechanical, comes into play. So really invite everyone to try to play it out and in this iterative manner to do the things machine tells you to do and then ask it to evaluate. So machine will come back to you and evaluate and give you another set of instructions. So really try to go into performance this way.
There's also quite a strong literary element in your pieces, almost like generative poetry. Can you tell me sort of what you were trying to achieve with the language element in this piece?
Yes, that is correct. So I believe I'm really impressed by artists using literal texts and poetry within the visual language. So those mediums of communication are somewhat different, but I just love to combine those and trying to find also intersections of what cannot be expressed with words and what cannot be expressed with visual language. This is one of goals that I just love to explore in my work. So here again, this text element was something that I really wanted to incorporate within the work, even in such a simple way, by just showing the instructions and trying to make it part of the minted work.
And Tyler, could you perhaps give your thoughts on that and describe your project as well?
Sure. My project is called Stepping Stones. Kind of the idea behind it is that you have all these small, very simple pieces, and you're arranging them and putting them in different colors and ways to make them all either very simple or very complex outputs. So I'm taking these very basic cube-looking shapes and applying these basic patterns to them, and then doing lots of distortion to them to blend them and mix them all together. So you've got some outputs that are very simple and not much going on with them, honestly. And then you've got these really chaotic outputs as well. So I think it's fun to see, and the rarity and features of this project, they don't have a ton of meaning, honestly. It's really up to which ones you like, because some people like those really simple ones that are, one of the features is called Zen, like everything just matches, it's very peaceful in a way, but then you have other ones that are crazy, and like party time is one of the features. So yeah, I'm kind of leaving it up to whoever likes what outputs they like, and making it not just based on a rare feature that is seen as more valuable just because it has a feature. I really want people to look through the outputs and see what speaks to them.
Reading some of the materials on your website, you mention several occasions where you kind of make mistakes, perhaps in the code, or something untoward happens that you weren't expecting, and you had learned to embrace that. And I guess this kind of touches on that role of the generative artist as a curator, essentially, of their own kind of creations. I just wonder if you could perhaps talk to us a little bit about your thoughts about your input into that process.
Yeah, what's very different about generative art is that you're not working on just one piece, one output. You're kind of working on more of like a feeling of what you want to express. So each time I'm making a change to the code, I'm seeing a different output And after seeing hundreds of these, you kind of get the feeling, oh, I don't like that these are maybe too chaotic, and you sort of tone that down, or now it's getting too simple, you have to crank that back up. So yeah, in a weird way, you're kind of curating a series of potential pieces. You're not working on a specific artwork where you're making tiny little detail changes. So I kind of see generative art as yes, artists, because they're building these algorithms from scratch, but then at a certain point you kind of turn into a curator and decide what you want to keep, what you want to get rid of, things like that.
Thanks, Tyler. This Collective then, onto your project in the Tezos booth. Could you tell us a little bit about that and perhaps something about the nature of the performative, interactive aspect?
Yeah. Udne is actually a series of asymmetrical textural compositions that I really love to call them, because it's the main idea behind the Udne is just using 3 elements and limiting myself with just using that three mathematical equations, or I might say particle drawing systems with just 3 colors to create some kind of organic looking and abstract compositions, which I really love to think long form as a musical term, as like a musical form. So long form for me is like an album, or like I might say maybe a very long song form, like 3-part song form. So Udne is like that. Every iteration is a song. Every particle drawing system is a musical motifs. So combining with 3 motifs, I'm creating songs, and these songs, like all of them, all serves the same narrative that we have in the old collection, but they all kind of different from each other, but still telling us the same story. I think generative arts, and especially long-form generative art, enabled me to tell a very larger stories than just a single created output. So, if you want to add something, or
I think, yeah, we can also talk about what we are thinking about when we are exploring these textures within the collection. So for us, since we started doing long form like a year ago, and on the FXH, we started working on again like 3 particle painting systems with 3 colors, and to explore these textures. This time in Udne, we actually, Ilgun was working on a new technique. I can call it technique, like watercolor. So we wanted to merge these 2 drawings with like having and merged texture, I would say. So the idea was that behind Udne is having, so for example, we thought this in a macro and micro level, that these textures that we can see in our everyday life. So let's say, imagine a wall that there's like lots of artworks on it, on the public, and you know, it's been there, these artworks, these graffitis and posters and everything was there for so long. And let's imagine that the wall has 2 that it's rains on it, and it actually like creates another layer of texture. That's what we are trying to explore on Udne, like let's say in a micro level, and or we can also think about this as like as a landscape and on a sunset, and you know, there's this foggy atmosphere, and the light the light emits, the fog emits the light, and then you see this blurry, foggy atmosphere, but this air pollution is still there, and it's kind of like it creates another texture in as an idea. So that's what we are trying to explore within Udne.
Thank you, guys. You mentioned that your inspiration or your kind of aim with your generative artworks, particularly the long form ones, is this sort of search for an organic representation, some kind of organic elements. Could you sort of tell us about the inspiration for that particular aesthetic choice?
Mm-hmm. Like for me, when I started coding, as I said, I started coding with audio. So I was like programming the audio because like I wanted to create like digitally like digital sounds with an organic feel to it. So so I discovered using code as a medium in music and in visuals too enabled me to push forward the like I have a texture in my mind that I want to do, and it's a very digitally looking texture. Maybe I might say like a polished one. So when I tried to do visual stuff without coding, I always end up with that polished digital texture. But when I started coding, the nature of like the how you say freeness, like the özgürlük, help me.
Freedom.
Yeah, the freedom that coding gives to you is kind of very, I may say, easy way to find organic feel because of the randomness, or because of not just randomness, but the main element is randomness, and my input is like is more real than other stuff. Okay, yeah, my brain stopped a bit. Sorry about that. But
It's almost midnight, so okay, we get a little bit sleepy, I guess.
Thank you for joining us so late. We appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
You mentioned story earlier, that the longer form projects allow you to sort of tell stories. Would you say that you're trying to be storytellers with these pieces? What's your kind of general sort of aim with these works?
Actually, we started in our previous work in Solitude. We started to try to tell the story with Solitude. Then Udne is our actual second collection, which is not just having a long form as like a form. As I said, it's just with a storytelling aspect to it. Mm-hmm. So maybe you are the storyteller, so you can.
The thing is that it's not like we're trying to have the collection has an overall story, but for us, as Ilgin mentioned, that we're thinking this as like an album. So as an album, it's like it would have like several tracks, and they would just one by one they would probably tell some stories in it. So we are trying to find abstract textures, but in the end, when we are working at home in our home studio together, we end up finally like looking at kind of sceneries, and that's what we are trying to actually talk about it. But it's the whole collection doesn't have to be tell the whole story, but it's what comes from us. So yeah.
Thanks, guys. I guess one of the questions I always ask generative artists in my work for the magazine that I create is one that frustrates a lot of them, because they've probably been asked it several times in their careers so far. But it's a pertinent one, I think, for people who are not so au fait with generative art, NFTs, digital art, perhaps. And the question is, where do you think, and this is a question for all of our panelists, where do you think the art resides in the generative process? Is it more in the sort of code base that then generates the art, or is it in the final pieces itself, or some extra meta level to that? I don't know who wants to go first. Maybe Tyler this time, perhaps?
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's different for the artist and collectors what the actual art is. Because for me, I'm seeing thousands and thousands of outputs when I'm working on a project. And by the time I'm ready to publish, that I'm done. Like, that's what I've made. But for everyone else, they're just seeing the final set of outputs that are created, and that's the art to them. They haven't seen all of those 1,000 previous test outputs. So yeah, I think it is very different. To me, I will see the ones that come out at the end, but I know that there are so many others that are similar or very different that never get seen. But there is that kind of wall between artist and collector that they don't really get to peek and see over the wall and see all those what could have been outputs. I do like keeping, on FX Hash specifically, the variations enabled even after minting is done, just so people can go back and see, you know, yeah, they weren't part of that collection officially, but just to see what else that code could have made.
Has your interaction with collectors since you began your journey in FX Hash changed your approach or your thinking at all about this?
Yeah, 100%. Because when I was posting things I was working on last year, end of last year, I think I had maybe 50 Twitter followers, just throwing it out there into the ether, just whatever I was working on. But now when I post something, people are like, oh, when's that going to be minted and on FX Hash? And it's a very different feeling. So I try not to post anything until it's close to ready. But I do like to interact with everyone who enjoys my work, enjoys other FX Hash artists' work. I think it's a lot of fun just being part of that community, and it's very tight-knit, which is a lot of fun, but tight-knit, but also very welcoming. There's always new artists and collectors coming in.
I'll potentially come back to you about that notion of transparency in the work-in-progress process. But perhaps, Sivona, if you could answer the same question about where the art is.
Yeah, of course. This is a very fascinating question, I find, and it also relates to the question of authorship, I guess, because who says what art is? Perhaps the author would be the best entity to answer the question. And with my work, I also try to blur the lines, so there you no longer know who the author is. So even more difficult is to answer what the art is here. Is it idea, this intangible concept? Is it the minted piece? Is it the piece that has seen the interaction of viewer who draws on top of the work with various brushes? And the lines are blurred on purpose, and this is why I want to kind of have this reflection in viewers to think what would they consider art, and who would they consider author. And those questions don't have answers, so I don't have an answer either. But I just would love to kind of everyone have a thought about it. And I believe that this is also something that, for me as an artist, was quite challenging when I started to work with long-form generative art, as I really love to have the control over the process. I work with those powerful neural networks that just do whatever you want them to do. So kind of you want to guide them, and you want to design everything and to choose the created outputs, to choose the directions. But of course, when you work with algorithms, you don't have this complete control, and you just design the boundaries, you just design kind of the process, but it can go out of control very easily, and you don't want that. Maybe sometimes you want that. You also like to be surprised by your own works. So this is a very new relationship to kind of creating, and it's also very, I would say, it gives a lot of freedom and makes you change the way you see your own work. So it's just fascinating to play with those concepts in your own practice.
I guess with all long-form generative art projects, you're sort of throwing that out there to the collectors to then kind of create their own piece of the work. But there seems to be an added sort of sense of participation in this event, particularly in the fact that the live audience is coming to interact with it and to mint the pieces, which I hope all of you have done or will do during the weekend. Do you think that kind of extra element of participation sort of brings something extra? Did it change the way you thought about the piece as you were creating it, perhaps?
Yes, so I would say that one of the aspects that is the most rewarding for me as an artist is to see people live react to my works. And also it's one of my goals to evoke emotions within viewers. So when I'm just around at some exhibition, especially incognito, and hear people talk about the works and hear what they remind them of, is something that is the most rewarding for me as an artist. And I believe that this being present with the works, and especially seeing them created on the spot, minted and already owned by the viewer, makes them a special experience to the people collecting, but to artists as well. So for everyone, it's this experience that also becomes a performance in a way. It has this element of surprise, but it also has this element of human interaction and conversation, either with an artist or with other folks attending. Even the way how participants here can interact with the collection, but also having in mind their own piece. Where does the rarity score put their own piece with the full distribution? It makes them feel perhaps be part of something.
Disc Collective, the same question to you guys. I guess your mention of this concept of several pieces working together as an album, as a concept, maybe affects the way you answer this question, but over to you.
Yeah, I think for me, is about finding the right balance, in the whole collection, like finding the right balance between the layers of probabilities and between the between the iterations and between the chaos, and maybe sometimes it will be more controlled and more without control. Testing and finding the right balance is I see where is the artist in generative art.
And I think it's like as a duo, sometimes it gets hard because it's like we test like so many outputs, and then we share our thoughts about it, and then sometimes we think, do we have too much control over the overall algorithm or not, or do we like what we see? And it's like sometimes it feels like you can't make enough decisions to about it, because you end up sometimes getting surprise outputs which are really good or not, and it doesn't really matter. But yeah, it's a very difficult question actually.
And for us specifically, it's about finding the balance between us two, because we always struggle about it, and but it's a nice kind of a dynamic edit to it. So, yeah.
Yeah, you've just taken my next question actually, because we've been talking about the relationship with human and machine, and obviously with the added element of the audience or the collector in generative art. But obviously, you work as a collaboration yourselves, as a collective, as a duo. Can you talk to us a little bit about that extra kind of how that extra dimension of collaboration works for you guys?
For me, it was very hard actually, because like for me, like going like learning how to letting it go with the algorithm was very hard. And there's another level with us, like I should sometimes let go some of my ideas, because like she has a different vision, and most of the time she's right about them, and I'm very stubborn, and I was very control freak. So this dynamic, especially generative art algorithms, and being a duo, like taught me to find the right, again I would say balance between letting it go and controlling everything. I think it's yeah.
Well, I can say that it's like we also do music together, so we're kind of used to working together for a long time. The thing is that I don't very feel comfortable as much as Ilgun do in terms of creative coding. So especially for long forms, Ilgun usually has the artistic idea that he would implement it with the algorithm, and then he makes sure that it works. Then I would jump in, and then we would start working on the compositions, color palette selections, and the overall algorithm, the meaning, the story behind the algorithm, etc.
Thanks, guys. Just to let everyone know here, we will be taking questions at the end of this session, so if you have anything you wanted to ask any of our artists, then you'll get a chance at the end. I have a few more questions for you guys, though, before we do that. And Ivona, I guess for you first, your work is a unique combination of your AI work, you're a PhD in AI, and you're also a photographer. And also now you're working with generative systems. So it's quite for me, it's a unique combination. And I just wondered if you could speak to us about how you mold all these different kind of medium into what you produce.
Yeah, I have many hats, and sometimes I feel like I have many personalities. So in one way, it's challenging, but it's also fascinating, because I believe that those different aspects of being photographer on one hand, being AI researcher on the other, helps me to see both areas or all of the areas through a set of different lenses. And it also helps sometimes to notice things that, well, photographers maybe would not notice, the potentials of photography within the usage of photography and code, and the other way around, of having kind of like structure within the creative process that's coming from AI research, and also exploring the models on a deeper level and trying to gain a deeper understanding of how artificial intelligence works. So I believe that those different aspects really help me with the discovery process and going on explorations. And this is what I really like to do most in my work. It's when I call myself AI artist, I like to explore the areas of using AI in a way that no one's doing. I'm not interested in doing the same thing everyone's doing. I'm just thinking, how can I do this differently? And it goes the same for photography. I just don't want to do travel photography or concert photography no longer, but I want to train AI on my photography. And this kind of way of making photography when training models on top is also very different, because you have to learn to look at images the way machine does. So really generalizing concepts in a very different way. So I believe that in my case, it kind of goes perfectly together to create this kind of person who I am in a very weird way. But yeah, it's just what are the elements combining my kind of personality.
This may be reductive, but in terms of your overall kind of artistic journey, which came first? Would you consider yourself a photographer initially, or a coder initially, or researcher? What sort of timeline?
Yeah, I kind of thought of those as separate concepts. I always thought I had like this split personality, photographer on weekends, serious researcher on weekdays. So now all those personalities came together very, very happily. But I believe it comes from me being actually from a mixed background as well. My mother's Polish, my father's Lithuanian, so I was always learning two languages at the same time, learning two cultures at the same time. And it also came to the fact that I was fascinated by art since young age, but also numbers since a young age. So yeah, it kind of came together at the same time.
Thanks, Sabrina. And Tyler, going back to that notion we were talking about sharing your work in progress, I think on one of your projects write-ups for the Ortenda project, which was called Love, I think, you said you're usually hesitant to share work in progress. And I just wondered, for me, it seems like you're one of the most transparent artists in terms of your progress, work in progress. Yeah, and I just wondered sort of what your thoughts were on that, and if there is any kind of interaction with collectors or with followers on social media, for example, that shapes the project before it becomes something available to mint.
Yeah, it's something I noticed because I was originally just posting everything online, and then people kind of came to expect whatever I was posting to be like a final result of a project. And I kind of felt like I was trapped in that specific look or outcome. Like when the project is finished, that should be a possible outcome. But sometimes it's early on and I want to completely redo something and make it totally crazy or different. And I feel like I would let those people down if I changed it dramatically in a way. So yeah, I've come to kind of save posting my pictures and works in progress until I'm basically done and happy with those results. Because yeah, don't want to make anyone unhappy.
That's an interesting idea that you're sort of fearful of making collectors or people who mint these works unhappy. Is that a tension that you feel regularly? I guess that this question could go to everyone as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to just... I'm not trying to necessarily cater to specific collectors, like, oh, I'm going to make a piece that looks like this to make people want to buy it. That's not my goal necessarily. But yeah, I want to make sure the expectations are like clear of what it will be in the end.
And I guess final question for Dist before we open to questions from the audience for the last 10 minutes. You mentioned this concept of the album. Do you have a sort of album completion date in mind? Is that something that you're working on to those larger scales?
Well, actually, Udne is kind of an album completion for us because, like before Udne, we had collection in terms of edition size, like 150 or it was maximum 300. So for Udne is like has a 800 edition size. So thinking Udne for me especially, like we have a kind of a three different placement, I might say, in if anyone see the results, you might notice the particle system starting from horizontal and vertical and circular. So we actually there are three albums, little albums, like three singles, EPs, okay, and they are forming an like a completion album for now, and maybe more in the future, because I really love these concepts of thinking as a musical form in long form. It really worked for me, so I really enjoyed it. So I want to explore it furthermore. So yeah.
But you also asked for the music, right? That was, yeah, but we're not doing that right now. Yeah, not in the short term.
I quit being a composer when I started. Generative. It's like as Ivana said, I still, it's like a other personality of me. I still couldn't find any time to compose. I really miss, but I will. Maybe a joint one, maybe an audiovisual long form. Yeah, we will see. Yeah.
So yeah, I highly recommend, if you haven't already seen these 3 projects in the Tezos booth, just back there, to go and check them out and mint your own artworks. We have just over 5 minutes for questions from the audience for our artists. If anyone would like to ask a question, now is your chance. I think we have a gentleman at the back here with the microphone, so if you raise your hand if you have a question, and we'll get to you.
Beautiful. Hey, my name is Lex. I am a collector and developer on Tezos. Thank you for this presentation. Thank you for the art and the innovation. My question is something I'm getting a lot of reactions from collectors as well as how do you use AI? AI gives you this ability to generate large quantities of art. There's a lot of options. How do you keep it learning? How do you kind of juggle the possibilities of AI and the amount of art that can be, and then the handmade kind of non-AI as opposed to the for collecting? Because when you look for artists who really want what they make, not as much decisions of the AI and how they make this. Kind of tell us about that process.
Yeah, of course. So, well, it definitely helps to use different kinds of AI. So there's a common misconception that there is just like this magical AI that does things, but, well, AI is just an umbrella term for so many different models, and I like to use different kinds of models. So I use a lot of GANs, but also here I'm using just plain CNNs for classification. So there's just a myriad of ways to use that, but I still believe that the success of AI project lies in the human element. So I always try to incorporate something personal within, whether it's personal memories encompassed in the photography, and then you get this very unique feeling, which kind of becomes your unique personal style, or add code elements. So on FXH collections, I actually combine the kind of traditional procedural generative art making. I think AI disagrees. Yeah, but yeah, there's just a lot of ways to make that personal.
Just set the world on fire.
Not quite sure what's going on there. Anyone else have any questions for our panelists? I think we have someone over here. We're coming to you.
Hi, my name is Ryan, and I just had a quick question about like your creative signature, your mark on what identifies you as an artist. I mean, when we walk out here at the fair, we look at a lot of like painters, for example, who have like a brush or a technique that they tend to follow. And I'm questioning in digital art and creative coding and AI art, what is it that you tend to see your signature? Is it something that lies in like the data set for the AI artwork, or is it something that's lying within the creative coding side that maybe we don't see as the visual representation that's on the screen?
That's an excellent question. Thank you. I guess we'd go to everyone in turn on that one. Disc Collective, would you like to address that initially?
Yep. For me, I think like using textures and using particle systems and maybe muted colors.
Yes, muted colors.
Yeah, we might say these are kind of a signature thing.
organic-looking abstract textures, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
So would you say it's more of a visual aesthetic signature for you guys rather than sort of code-based?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to explore, and yeah.
And Tyler, I guess to you next.
Yeah, for me, it's also, I think, a visual similarities between all my projects. When I was just starting, I was using very basic shapes, circles, squares, things like that. But that's kind of just what I've stuck with, and just combining them in more complicated ways as I've moved forward. So pretty much all of my projects, you can break them down to those basic geometric shapes being combined in various ways and more complicated ways over time. And maybe that aesthetic will change in the future, but that's, I would say, is kind of my the trend throughout my work so far.
And Ivona?
Yeah, for me, so it really started with visual aesthetic and being drawn to dark colors and particular colors who are reminiscent of analog photography. So this is something that was there very strong in my, let's say, first project that I did. But the more I grow as an artist, the more I like to go out of my comfort zone. And I would say that now it becomes a common ground for themes that I explore. So it's very much related to memories, emotions, humanity, and what makes us, what makes our consciousness, what makes our personalities, and to have this kind of exploration within those themes. I still like to go outside of those, but I'm still drawn to particular visual aesthetics as well. So, but it's not as bounded as before, I would say.
Thanks, guys. I probably have time for one question, if anyone has one. Otherwise, we'll wrap up. Anyone have a question? Nope. Okay, great. That's essentially the time up then. So we will be in the Tezos booth just around the corner, all of us. If you wanted to ask any questions of us, please do come along. There is an FX Hash event beginning at 4, I believe. So yeah, do come along for that if you want some free champagne, at the very least. So yeah, thank you for the panelists, to Tyler, to Ivona, and to Disc Collective, especially because it's so late in Istanbul. Thank you for that. Go to sleep. Have a nice sleep. And thank you to all you guys for coming, and thanks for the excellent questions. Cheers.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for having us.